voices further shakes my weakened constitution. I'm alone in a dark movie theater, 3,000 miles from home, feeling skinny and sick and completely caught off guard by the most famous song by my father, Roy Ayers. Everybody Loves the Sunshine was a moderate hit when it was first released in 1976. But it's grown over time. It's been sampled more than 100 times by various artists including Mary J. Blige, Common, J. Cole, Tupac, Snoop Dogg, and Black Eyed Peas. It's been covered by D'Angelo and Chibo Matto, spanning decades and constantly refreshing itself into modern context. I've heard it in many different iterations over the years, a perennial, persistent reminder of my otherwise absent father. After one very long minute of music, Dre's mother surprises him by turning off the record, which snaps him out of his meditative state. My chest feels hot and my breath is short. My first reaction is to sink into my cushy chair and look around the theater to see whether anyone is looking at me. Is this what it would feel like to run into him? I wonder. I'd last seen my father 9 years earlier, when I was 34, but that had been planned. A lunch in Seattle, my first ever meeting with him as an adult. The time before that, when I was 11, I had no idea who he even was. Since moving back to New York City, where he lives, I'm always slightly, subconsciously on guard, ready to run into him, but I definitely wasn't expecting it in a dark movie theater in Los Angeles while getting over food poisoning. Though my father and I live in the same city and are both in the music business, our paths have never crossed in the 7 years that I've lived in New York. Occasionally, someone asks me how he's doing. It surprises me every time, and I usually respond with something like, "You'd probably know better than I would," which feels confrontational and often leads me to quickly offer a slightly apologetic, less biting explanation that he's never been a presence in my life. How, I wonder, did a hippie child in New York City who never knew his father become a grown man who still didn't know his father, but encountered his music regularly? Were moments like these truly coincidental, or had my father's DNA guided me into a life in music, and ultimately to the places where his presence caught me off guard? It has been over a year since I last tried to contact my father, and though I was unsuccessful, I decide it's time for another try. I know he won't become the father I'd never had, but maybe he can become the father I meet for lunch once or twice a year. The father who tells me about his life and my family history. The father who texts me each year on my birthday. He might not respond, but even if my father ignores me, I will have tried. Little do I know in that moment that the impact of that minute in the theater, the intensity of hearing my father's music, my music, in a public place through huge speakers and staring at his picture on a giant screen will be the catalyst that opens up 2 centuries of perspective on my family. 1. Ubiquity. Dear Louise, dance, swing, love, groove, and be as sweet as you are. Roy. On a warm summer evening in 1970, Roy Ayers signed the glossy 8x10 photograph of himself and handed it to my mother with a proud smile. She felt awkward accepting an autographed photo from someone to whom she felt so close, but she also knew that beneath his tremendous talent and his infectious warmth, Roy was an ambitious, self-centered person who was steadfastly focused on his career and unavailable to her. Each time she saw him, she worried it might be the last. My mother had first met Roy when she was 20 in 1970, when she and her 18-year-old brother Alan, an aspiring jazz saxophonist who'd once met Roy, bumped into him one night at the Village Gate, a jazz club in New York City. By then, Roy Ayers was already quite well known. He had played alongside legendary musicians like Herbie Mann, Jack Wilson, and Leroy Vinnegar, and then, between 1967 and 1969, released 3 acclaimed albums under his own name on Atlantic Records. By 1970, Roy Ayers was a 29-year-old master of the vibraphone, a large, beautiful, complex instrument better known as the vibes. That night at the Village Gate, my mother found Roy to be strikingly gorgeous with his beautiful brown eyes and his warm, confident smile. She also felt an instant